Hi, I'm Matt and welcome to our Multimedia Review project. For our topic, we've chosen Australia's sporting role in a globalised world. So just a brief overview of what we've covered in this Multimedia Review project. We've started with the introduction, which gives background information and the selection justification. Moving on, we analyse contemporary media, so specifically visual, print and web-based examples. We then go on to the analysis of academic literature, the comparison of views, and the future impacts these have. We look forward to presenting to you. Thank you. Analysis of contemporary media. Contemporary media promotes and discusses Australia's sporting industry and the various codes within to the world. The media can dictate how a sport is perceived by consumers around the globe. So just to delve into a visual example, I've covered a YouTube video. Well, I've looked at a YouTube video which outlines the highlights of the Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather fight, which is known as the fight of the century. So this was the biggest global pay TV audience in sporting history. An estimated 200 million viewers watched the fight. That's huge. This event represents the sociologist's conflict theory. The fight itself and the media channels used to promote the fight revolved around the money, wealth and economic forces. And just to relate it to Australian sport, basically what I've done, I've talked about how if Conor McGregor was Australian, this would be a massive promotion for Australia's UFC and boxing industry and the global promotion of Australia and its identity through one individual. Australia may now be influenced by this global event, this global fight, to find a UFC champion like Conor, and it has sparked conversation which leads on to my web and print-based example. It's actually sparked conversation surrounding Australian boxer Jeff Horn. So National 9 News website, so web-based example, has published a web page promoting discussion on a potential fight between Conor McGregor and Jeff Horn. This is an example of how the recent fight of the century has generated public interest in high-level boxing. So just to sum up, there's multiple examples daily, visual examples, be it television, YouTube, etc., that definitely influence consumers. And then you go into web and print-based, they definitely influence consumers as well. And a lot of them can bounce off each other and relate on a global scale. That's all from me. Thank you.
In the article Global Games, Culture, Political Economy and Sport in the Globalised World of the 21st Century, Milne discusses how he believes sport plays a very important role in globalisation from an economical point of view. His theory states that sport tourism opens up opportunity for new investment throughout cities, boosting not only sporting capital within the city but also the other cultural elements the cities have to offer. Therefore, his statement states that large-scale sport media and tourism complexes should be a part of many regional and national development plans. Australia is a real-life example of how this theory can be a success. They're a developed country who have strong sporting programs that have resulted in a reputation for being extremely competitive and successful on an international scale. They also have the funding to be able to introduce world-class sporting programs and also continuously improve infrastructure that attracts the likelihood of them hosting mega events in the future. A limitation to Milne's article is that this process is really only confined to Europe, North America, Australia and parts of Asia such as Japan and China. For the process to work convincingly, countries must have enough capital to be able to sustain hosting mega events. So therefore, not every single country in the world can have regional and national development plans addressing tourism issues when it's not their major concern. Another limitation to his article suggests that hosting mega events can have long-term social and economical, will always result in long-term social and economical benefits to the host country. However, this isn't always true. In 2004, the Olympic Games hosted by Athens saw an economic downfall that was almost catastrophic to the country due to the large number of borrowings that they could not pay back to the European Union. The Olympic Games in Brazil again saw billions of dollars being invested into facilities that the country couldn't maintain, and therefore now the facilities have been abandoned. So hosting mega-scale events isn't always a success for the country. The article is researched well and is deemed to be trustworthy. However, due to the fact that it was published in 2004, the validity of the article is questionable. The article Globalisation, Sports, Nation and Nationalism, written by Hargreaves, again suggests that globalisation is run predominantly by the West. Where his article differs from the others is that he suggests globalisation has been Americanised. He also goes on to suggest that major events such as the Olympic Games and FIFA also can impact globalisation of sport. However, he makes an interesting statement that suggests that although sports such as basketball and rugby union are played in multiple countries, their impact on globalisation is quite small due to the fact that there are only a handful of countries that participate in the sport. He also suggests that sports such as golf, tennis and motorcar racing have very little impact on globalisation due to low popularity of the sports. However, I agree with this to a point, to the fact Australia, a real-life example of a country whose major sports, including netball and Australian League's football, are only played by a small population within our country and therefore aren't contributing to globalisation. However, where I disagree with his statement is that I believe that sports such as golf, tennis and motorcar racing are contributing to globalisation in a huge way. There are currently 20 Formula One car races held in each season, and the Grand Prix, although they're very European based, have now spread out to almost every continent in the world, with races being held in Europe, North America, South America and Asia. So Antarctica and Africa are the only continents that don't host a Formula One Grand Prix, and that's where I have to disagree with him that motorcar racing don't contribute to globalisation, because the Grand Prix in Melbourne increases Victoria's gross profit by $32 million a year. So how is that not contributing to globalisation in an economic way? It definitely is, and it's all over the world. I think that a limitation to Hargreaves' argument is that he writes the argument with a very strong level of American patriotism. The article is very biased, claiming that American football has a strong impact on globalisation, however basketball doesn't or cricket doesn't. I think that American football is a sport that is only really closely followed within America and perhaps Canada, and it has a weak following everywhere else. So I don't see the difference on how American football affects globalisation as much as cricket, because there are more people playing cricket. But like earlier on his argument, he says that cricket doesn't contribute to globalisation, so I don't really understand that. I find that his article can be quite contradictory. Although he made some valid points in the argument, because of the biased outlook on the argument, I found his article somewhat untrustworthy. The article, titled Sociology of Sport on Globalisation, Communication and Sport Research, explains globalisation of sport in a much more realistic sense. Lee goes on to explain again that the hosting of mega events is crucial to globalisation of sport and is its major contributor. However, where he states it from a more realistic sense is that he discusses the extreme amounts of research and decades worth of work that need to be completed before a country can assess whether hosting a mega event such as an Olympic Games is realistic and sustainable for the country. Where this theory can be applied to Australia is in the place of globalisation is that they have successfully run a number of mega events such as the Melbourne and Sydney Olympic Games and the Melbourne Commonwealth Games. They also host a Grand Slam tennis tournament every year and the Melbourne Grand Prix. They have enough money and they've done enough research in order to host these mega events. Where Lee differs from all the other articles, especially McNaught's articles, is that he discusses that it's not sustainable for every single country to host an Olympic Games or host a mega event. It's not sustainable for every single economy. It's really only sustainable for countries who can afford it. So countries such as Sri Lanka probably aren't going to host mega events because they just simply can't afford it. This article was very trustworthy. It was very well researched. However, a lot of the arguments and valid points weren't applicable to Australia's position in globalisation of sport because it was taken from the point of view of somebody who lived in South Korea.
Hi all, back again. Matt here. With me I have Kirby. We're basically here to talk about the similarities and differences between contemporary media and academic literature. So to start off, I'm going to talk about the similarities. So I reckon the main one is the overall ideas and content of both sides of the media, so being the academic literature and the contemporary media. I think when they are delving into their knowledge and information, what they do is cover the same topics because basically they interest the public, hence why they are similar. And also they promote mega events. So I know one of the big ones, although it's not directly relevant to the Australian sporting industry, but everyone probably aware of it, is the Conor McGregor and Money Mayweather fight. So that is an example of a mega event which contemporary media has covered and one that academic literature will cover in the future.
But also, like, to add in, an example of how sport is globalised is the Olympic Games and the Commonwealth Games, because they're sports that every single country in the world, or almost every single country in the world, can participate in.
Absolutely.
And so again, they're another example of a mega event that's covered both in contemporary media through magazines and newspapers, but also in academic literature, in order to purvey sport globalisation.
Fantastic. Alright, and now we'll delve into the differences between contemporary media and academic literature. So over to you, Kirby.
So some of the differences between academic literature and contemporary literature is that journal articles in academic literature are usually objective, so they use facts, figures, and the whole story, as well as lots of research in order to produce that story, whereas contemporary articles are usually quite subjective in the fact that they only like to print what the public actually wants to hear.
Well said, yep.
Another difference is that academic literature is based on theories by theorists people who have researched. There's a lot of referencing in academic literature, it's well researched, whereas contemporary literature is based purely on entertainment. It's what the public wants to hear, it's what the magazines want to print. It's about who won the sport rather than the effects that that particular sporting event had on a community. And another difference is just the audience. Like, journal articles are generally only published for the academic, for an academic audience, so that's like professors and universities and things. Whereas contemporary is just for your average everyday person who doesn't really have an interest or knowledge on the background information of globalisation in sport.
Absolutely, thank you, Kirby. So that sums up the similarities and differences. Thank you for your time. Hi all, Matt here. With me I have Andrey, here today to talk to you about the future impacts of Australia's sporting role in the globalised world, specifically for our multimedia review project. Andrey, you've broken down your work into 3 sections. Can you please go into the economic impact?
No problem, Matt. The expenditure of public money on sport facilities and events is an international phenomenon that occurs at every level of government.
Yep.
This could be a negative in the future for countries, as the amount of money that government are willing to spend on these facilities will one day reach a staggering amount.
Fantastic.
A positive impact is mainly visualised through the tourism that sports generates. Fans and tourists bring money that normally wouldn't be there. In the future, Australia may have an impact on the economy of other nations, as Australia is a sport-loving country and willing to travel anywhere to watch the sport.
Fantastic, mate. Very interesting. And moving on, we have our social and cultural impacts. Can you please delve into this?
Yep. Throughout the world, sport plays a massive role in bringing together of individuals and the communities. Sport can provide positive assistance in overcoming differences to help to break down the barriers associated with prejudice and stereotypes, cultural differences, and also discrimination. Australia may be envisioned as a leader in changing against prejudice and discrimination occurring in our nation. Multiculturalism and inclusion of these cultures into our sport.
Fantastic. And the last part of your breakdown, obviously, is future health through sport, which I think is a big one.
In Australia, sedentary lifestyle are beginning to take over the nation. The Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation collaborated with Australian Sport Commission, and together they identified 6 megatrends likely to shape the Australian sports sector over the next 30 years.
Yes, mate, and obviously I've been over your notes and I'll just go into that. So these 6 megatrends are a perfect fit from extreme to mainstream, more than sport, everybody's game, new wealth and new talent, tracksuits to business suits.
That's great, man. I just got one more thing to add to that.
Yep.
These mega trends in Australia could potentially become in 6 mega trends of the rest of the world if viewed positively through the eyes of other nations.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, Andrey. Over and out.